The Babylon Project was our last best hope for Scott. A self-contained podcast, 1 hour long, located on the internet. A place of fun and discussion for Babylon 5 fans everywhere. A shining beacon in cyberspace, all alone in the night. It was the dawn of the 20th anniversary of Babylon 5, the year the Great War to free Bab 5 came upon us all. This is the story of the last of the Babylon podcasts. The year is 2014. The name of the place is the Babylon Project Podcast.
This is Maggie Egan, your ISN news anchor, and you're listening to the Babylon Project podcast. Thanks for listening.
Hi there, Babylon 5 fans. This is Raoul and Jim. How are you doing tonight, Jim?
Doing very well.
I wish I could say the same. This has been allergy and sinus season for me right now, so I'm going to sound a little more nasally than usual, even with this big nose. But so tonight, we are talking about Deathwalker again.
Yes, again.
We had one of those technical glitches, folks, so we get to redo this one. But the good news is this was one of my favorite episodes. It was a lot of fun.
And I was the technical glitch, so.
No. I'll edit that out.
I'll take full credit for that.
So we get, what do we have? We have Deathwalker Jada herself in this one. We get a little of an Abbott and Costello routine. I had to throw that one in there. And I guess
who's on first?
Hey, that's you look at the dialogue between those two, and I think that's pretty much what was driving Talia nuts.
Yeah, more or less.
Well, let's get into the recap, and that'll help bring people who may not have seen it or haven't seen this in a while up to speed, and then we'll go ahead and talk about this.
Excellent.
All right, take it away, Jim.
Archive. Access. Initiated.
While Natoth awaits the arrival of a representative from Narn, she sees another person entering the station. Suddenly she screams Deathwalker and apparently goes berserk, beating the new arrival senseless. Garibaldi looks into the identity of the newcomer and finds her name listed as Gaila Lobos, a free trader from Minbari space. Despite Sinclair pointing out that the person known as Deathwalker would be very old, Natoth insists that Lobos is the notorious Dilgar war criminal. With further investigation, Garibaldi finds materials that might belong to Jadur, the person called Deathwalker. Sinclair calls up files on the computer that identifies that they do indeed most likely have Jadur on the station. He also finds an unidentified substance that Dr. Franklin needs to analyze. Meanwhile, Jakar, knowing that Natoth was correct in her identification, persuades her to postpone her Shankar, a kind of ritual revenge for the death of her grandfather at the hands of Jadur. He explains that Jadur has something that will give Narn great power over their enemies. He further tells her that he will help her complete her Shankar once they have secured what Jadur has to sell. Commander Sinclair is contacted by Senator Hiroshi from Earth and is ordered to send Jadur to Earth as soon as she is able to travel. He very reluctantly agrees. While Dr. Franklin is running tests on the substance, Jadur awakens and takes the substance away from Franklin and demands to see Sinclair. When Sinclair arrives, Jadur tells him her true identity and explains that the substance is her life's work. It is an anti-agapic that will give virtual immortality and prevent diseases. Her goal is to take it to Earth and have it distributed throughout the galaxy. Sinclair orders that Jadur's ship be ready for flight. He wants her off the station immediately. G'Kar learns that Sinclair is trying to get Jadur off the station clandestinely and calls another League ambassador to tell them who Sinclair is holding and what he plans to do. While Sinclair escorts Jadur to her craft, he is approached by several representatives of the League of Non-Aligned Worlds, and they insist that a hearing be held to have Jadur face trial for her crimes against their worlds. Sinclair agrees to the hearing. The League presents their case to the ruling council, and they take a vote to decide if Jadur is to stand trial. Londo of the Centauri votes no, as she has caused them no trouble. G'Kar votes yes under the condition that the trial be held on Narn. The League disagrees and G'Kar changes his vote to no. The results of the final vote is that Jadur will not be extradited and will proceed to Earth as ordered. Sinclair is willing to offer a compromise, but the League is unwilling to listen and warns that there will be trouble. Several ships from the League arrive at the station and demand that Jadur be released to them or they will open fire on the station. The League representative agrees to meet one more time to discuss Sinclair's compromise. Sinclair orders Ivanova to stall while he meets once more with the League representatives. In the meeting, Sinclair suggests that scientists from all the League worlds be sent to Earth to oversee the development of the anti-agapic agent. And when the research is finished, Jadur will be handed over to them for trial. They agree and the League ships depart from the station. Jadur is once again escorted to her vessel, but before she goes, she explains that her anti-agapic is made from substances that must be attained from living beings. And for this reason, there will be a great deal of death and destruction as races compete to secure the needed substances. This is her legacy, and she is proud of it. As Jadur departs the station heading for the jump gate, everyone is assembled in the command center to see her off. Suddenly, Kosh arrives in the command center to the surprise of everyone, because he has shown no interest in the plight of Jadur. At the same time, a large Vorlon vessel comes through the jump gate and destroys Jadur's ship. Everyone turns to Kosh, who says, "You are not ready for immortality." In a subplot, Kosh engages the services of Talia Winters as a telepath to monitor negotiations with Abbott, a vicar or human VCR. During the negotiations, Kosh and Abbott exchange several phrases which make no sense to Talia, but she detects nothing from either of them. During the negotiations, Talia has several visions, apparently of past memories. At the conclusion of the talks, Abbott hands a data crystal to Kosh. Confused, Talia asks Sinclair and Garibaldi about the experience. They explain that she was probably set up so Kosh could record information on Talia to be used at a later date.
Initiating plot analysis.
And thank you, Jim. Another wonderful recap as always.
Well, thank you very much. Happy to do it.
So, why in the world would a Vorlon need a teep? I guess that's the first big question there.
Well, yeah. Why? That kind of baffles me, but when you look down the road a piece, you kind of find out that they need telepaths for a particular reason.
Yep. In fact, not just need telepaths. Spoiler warning, though we aren't spoiler friendly here, but still, they actually created the telepaths.
Yes.
But and it's Talia in particular that he was interested in.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes me wonder: is he aware of what Jason Ironheart did to her?
Oh, most likely he is.
It doesn't
But
seem
then
like there's
again,
much that. Go ahead.
But then again, the Vorlons, they at this point don't take a large interest in human affairs, or so they say.
Not much of an interest at all, as you say. So they say.
Yes.
Though at the end here, they certainly seem to take an interest. But I think we'll get to that. Most
definitely. So what is this hour of scampering that Kosh is talking about?
I guess it's sort of. I always sort of thought of it as rush hour, but according to Joe Straczynski, and I think he might be somewhat tongue in cheek there, that was more of a. He called it tea time. More or less.
So along about the time that a shift change would take place on the station, that would be lots of people scampering here and there.
Scampering, you got it. Let's go ahead and we'll cover the Kosh side first, and then we'll switch over to the main story. He gets permission, makes all the arrangements to have her be a part of a negotiation, so-called negotiation, with someone named Abbott.
And the conversation between Abbott and Kosh is very interesting. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
A lot of nonsense. Yeah, it's a lot of nonsensical. And how does Kosh phrase that? How does Kosh phrase that? Listen to the music, not the words, or some sort of paraphrase.
Yes. Well, I was thinking that perhaps they were speaking in some kind of code at first when I first saw this. That they had a code that the two of them knew and nobody else did.
At one point, I know that was one of the things thought about. Then, of course, at the end, when you find out Abbott's been basically recording Talia.
Yes.
It seems like it was more just to get the kind of reactions that they got out of her.
Yeah, and then you say when Abbott was recording. Of course, we need to clarify that Abbott is a vicar, which is for VCR. He was a human. Mm-hmm. He was a human VCR, video cassette recorder. Yeah, that would record everything that went on inside of her head. So when I learned that, I began to think that perhaps Kosh was distracting Talia in order to get into her head a little better. Of course, we could see she was getting kind of bored. She was distracted. There was nothing there for her to read. She was required to be there under contract and was basically daydreaming a lot, probably.
Right, except for the spots where they intentionally triggered very strong, very intense reactions of a scan she had done in the past.
That was very scary looking.
In fact, that was one of the things Kosh, when she finally confronted him about it, what were you trying to record? It was the fear and the terror and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like they've got a copy of what Talia is.
Right.
And when she asks why, it's for the future.
So Garibaldi put forth there at the end of the show that perhaps Kosh was attempting to get information that he could use at a later date and to manipulate Talia.
Well, knowing where the story goes, as Kosh said, preserving her for the future, I think she would have fallen in largely to the a similar role that Lita Alexander ended up taking in season 3.
I was thinking the same thing, because after all, Lita was supposed to still be on the show, but
Originally.
was unable to. Right. And was unable to. So they had to replace her with Miss Winters. Who
eventually was replaced by Lita.
Yes.
And it ended up being one of those wonderful full circles.
Yeah.
Though I think it's funny, the Vorlons have this reputation for being leery or afraid of telepaths. Which is one of the things that came out in that same conversation with Garibaldi at the end. Because not only is it... I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I imagine that they would probably want to just make sure that who they're dealing with is someone they can take at face value.
Well, the other part, I mean, keep in mind, the Vorlons were the ones that created the telepaths, first of all. But who are the ones that truly are afraid of telepaths? Whose ships get shut down by telepaths? Kind of a delicious little irony, to borrow the phrase from Jador there. But kind of a delicious little irony, in a way, that it's actually the Shadows that are terrified of the telepaths, not the Vorlons.
Right. And the poor Narn don't have telepaths.
Yep, that was... that came out actually all the way back into The Gathering. We still don't know why yet. That still hasn't been let go, as far as the why.
That pretty well covers that, doesn't it?
Largely, though, there is one piece of Koshism that I've got to mention. And it became a favorite of mine and of a lot of people. That's the line that understanding is a three-edged sword.
Oh, yes.
And according to Straczynski, those three edges are my side, your side, and the truth in between.
Yeah, somewhere in the middle is the truth.
I used to have that hanging on my wall as a quote.
Well, I'll tell you what, as a teacher, I live it almost daily.
Yeah. Well, and onto the main story then.
Okay.
As you said, I think we've pretty well got this one covered. So, on to the main story. We see someone in Minbari warrior caste clothing coming on to the ship. But when this person draws back their hood, rather than seeing a Minbari, we see who is actually normally the very beautiful Sarah Douglas, looking nothing like Sarah Douglas.
Yeah, not even close.
Yep. Going by the name of Gaila Lobos.
And the Toth recognizes her as someone else.
And goes promptly berserk.
Yeah. And attacks this person and beats her absolutely senseless.
I was say, at first I was surprised that no one actually intervened to try and stop her until the security people showed up. But thinking about it, would you get in the way of Natoth in a rage?
Well, her attack was so abrupt that, it's one of those situations where you're kind of stunned and you kind of just stand there and say, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah, just the level of ferocity.
Yeah, that and the fact that I wouldn't want to get in the Toth's way.
Yeah. I still cannot believe that is Sarah Douglas under all that makeup.
Oh, yeah, I know. So, at any rate, we have her identified as Gaila Lobos and taken to the med lab to be administered to by Dr. Franklin.
Who doesn't recognize the race.
Right. And in comes Sinclair and recognizes what he thinks she might be.
As a Dilgar.
Yes, and does a computer search and finds out that she is a Dilgar.
Which is amazing itself because the race has been extinct for 30 years.
Only this one person has been hiding out with the wind swords on Minbari for a long time.
Yep, and this one particular person is Jadur, who was the War Master and has been guilty of what they call crimes against sentience.
Yes.
Much like Mengele.
Yeah. But yeah, much in the vein of Mengele doing experiments to try to create, I believe, what was the drug she was working on and that she brought on board with her that Franklin discovered.
Well, that was what she had there, but even before that, infecting entire populations just to see how long it would take them to die.
Yes.
The whole bit with Natoth implanting something in his brain to drive him insane and slowly kill him just as an experiment. So it was the anti-agapic that they discovered on her.
Right.
Is what you're talking about. And for those who don't know, an anti-agapic means an anti-aging drug. So it's virtual immortality.
Yes. And keeps you clear of disease and everything else.
And obviously, as quickly as she recovered, it improves your healing. So I would presume that unless it was killing you, extreme damage, you'll probably have a good chance of recovery.
Yes.
And it looks like everyone is wanting to get hold of this.
Yeah.
Except, of course, the League of Non-Aligned Worlds, who know nothing about it at this point.
No, they are the ones that were the main victims of Jador's experiments. The only major race, apparently, that she experimented with would have been the Narn, apparently.
Huh?
Well, yeah, that's why Natoth went after her, because it was her grandfather.
Yeah.
Okay. Because later on now,
the Blood Oath.
Yeah. Later on in the show, we find out that she hasn't, of course, she's been hanging with the Minbari, so she doesn't have a problem with them. The Centauri don't have a problem with her. And she never did get around to doing anything with humans, probably because we weren't really out there at that time.
And humans were more or less the tipping point in the Dilgar War.
Yes.
We were, this was 30 years ago, so it was 20 years before the Minbari War. We hadn't encountered the Minbari yet.
Right.
But it sounds like, we might not have been, quote, out there, but we were one of the more prominent powers, at least.
You think perhaps the Dilgar would have used us for experiments had we been a little more prominent? Or did they not have the power to mix it up with us?
In some ways it seems military power and a combination of military power and technological advancement that sort of defined the League of Non-Aligned Worlds versus the humans versus the Narn versus the Centauri. And I'm going to hazard the opinion that the humans were probably somewhere in between the general state, the general levels of technology and military of the non-aligned worlds and the major powers of the Narn at that point, the Centauri. So I don't know. I think it's mostly a matter of do they think they could get away with it?
Yeah.
Do they have the military power to try and get away with it? So the fact that we turned the tide of the war to the extent that we did, and it certainly seems that Deathwalker has a bit of an axe to grind with Earth. I rather suspect they may not have as much as they wished to, and would have had to take an alternate route to get their revenge.
Yeah.
Quite possibly something along some of the biological weaponry or biotech that she was so fond of.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, though, it seems as many League worlds as there are, that the Dilgar were that powerful that they could fight a sustained war against all those other worlds put together. That really makes the League look kind of backwards as far as the rest of the universe is concerned.
When you look at the structure, when you look at the structure of the Babylon 5 Council, you've got the League of Non-Aligned Worlds, and then you've got the Minbari, Narn, Humans, Centauri, and Vorlon.
Mm-hmm.
Though, as you say, the Vorlon kind of sit it out to a large degree at this point. It looks very similar to the UN and the UN Security Council.
Yeah, because the League only has one vote, right?
Yeah. You've got the General Assembly, and there's some rotating members out of the Security Council, but then you've got the main five who have essentially veto power. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work quite that way with the Babylon 5, the League Council, but the five main members of the UN Security Council are, of course, the most powerful and technologically advanced of the nations on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Now, though one would argue that the Chinese have... Well, no, the Chinese are a member of the Security Council, aren't they?
I believe they are.
Yeah, I was starting to say, though you could argue as far as technological advancement, Japan, South Korea, they've really gone to some pretty significant extremes as far as matching, in some cases possibly even exceeding.
Yeah.
So I think it's a similar sort of deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Getting back to our show.
This is my under the weather. My mind drifts.
So we get Senator Hidoshi from Earth calling in.
How does he find out so fast?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm sure he's got moles in there somewhere.
Anyway, you were saying, my friend.
Yes. He finds out in a big hurry that Jadur is on the station and wants her sent to Earth immediately. As soon as she is recovered from her injuries, she is to be sent to Earth.
Yep. Though the Narn are trying to pay her way to buy her attention.
Yes.
And everyone else is trying to keep everyone's trying to keep this pretty low key.
And Jakar makes an offer to have her sent to Narn.
Yeah.
And she agrees, but under the condition that Natoth is killed for him.
Not just killed, she wants her head.
Yes.
With Jadur's reputation, when she says she wants her head brought to her, yeah. I take that as a literal.
Oh, yeah. Of course, she knew that she knew full well that Jakar wasn't going to agree to that.
Right. And to the question is why everyone's, as we said, is after that anti-agapic. And her delicious irony statement, which I had alluded to earlier. Her initial explanation is that the universe will be indebted to the Dilgar. That is the delicious irony.
Yeah.
And of course, we're going to find out, and we'll get to that it's a delicious irony in more ways than what she simply lets on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. So Hidoshi finds out, wants her sent back, and Sinclair, in order to follow orders, of course he's not for this, but he has to follow orders, makes arrangements to have her sent back. However, that gets interrupted by a representative. A representative.
Not truly
of the
Jakar,
League.
But
because Jakar alerts them that she is about to leave the station.
Yeah, he doesn't want them to go before he has a chance to try and get the anti-agapic from her. So,
right. Ambassador
Kalika, she's only in season 1. I wish they had brought her back.
Yeah.
Robin Curtis did a great job with her.
I'm a fan of Robin Curtis. I know there are a lot of Star Trek fans who do not like her.
Question.
Yes.
Kirstie Alley or Robin Curtis?
Robin Curtis.
Okay. I really like both, but I'll admit to being a Kirstie Alley.
Okay. I think my problem with Kirstie Alley is after she had done her role on Star Trek, she just didn't maintain discipline. You know what I mean?
I'll agree with you on the actress, but the portrayal the portrayal of the role, I think I liked Kirstie's a little bit better. And that may not have been a matter of what Robin did or didn't do. It may have been more of how it was written.
Well, it could be. I'm just I like Robin Curtis better because she stays within what I would consider to be more of a Vulcan way that things are done.
But don't forget she was also half Romulan.
Right. And she also has more discipline off screen.
Yeah, no questioning that at all. And I'm just kind of thinking here as far as, okay, what would, if Robin had the opportunity to play the role as it was written in Wrath of Khan, what would have happened? And I think it would have been a good thing. I think it would have been good.
Yeah. I know there's a lot of Trek fans out there that completely disagree with me and say that Robin Curtis is horrible, but I'm sorry, I like her myself.
Oh, she wasn't horrible. I just like the portrayal. I just like Allie's portrayal.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're talking about Star Trek now instead of Babylon 5.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Well, that's what you get when you get a Trekkie on the show, I'm telling you. So at any rate, she approaches and they want she represents the League who wants to have their day in court. They want to have a hearing to present their side of the story.
Precisely.
And of course, right. And as Sinclair being the commander and having to show fairness to everybody, he can't refuse that.
Nope. In fact, that more or less, just apparently, just based on the charter, that more or less ties his hands.
Yes.
Which he was glad to have happen.
Yeah. Well, if he did refuse it, then, it would damage his credibility and the credibility of the purpose of the station itself.
Right. Which is exactly what G'Kar had intended. Right. So J'dur is held until the case for transferring her to Earth versus standing her for trial can be voted on by the Babylon 5 Council.
Mm-hmm.
And Kosh, of course, abstains, avoids it, as usual.
Right. He just plain doesn't show up.
Yep. Sinclair has Lanier following up with Delenn. Delenn's off station. So
correct.
Sinclair has Lanier trying to inquire what connection did J'dur have with the Wind Swords, and also he's counting on their vote. He's presuming that both Centauri and Narn are going to vote against having her stand trial for various reasons. Mm-hmm. So he's figuring 2 and 2. Okay, that's a tied vote, and the League vote, the collective League vote, will break the tie. And he'll be able to put J'dur on trial, which, contrary to his orders, is actually what he wants to happen.
Yeah, but Lanier turns the tide a little bit here.
In the wrong direction.
Right.
Exactly.
And obviously, when we watch Lanier do this, he is not happy about the way he has to vote on this.
I would say he almost looks ashamed.
Yes.
After the vote, of course, he explains it to Sinclair. That, yes, J'dur had been with the Wind Swords. No, the primary Minbari government wasn't aware of it. The Great Council didn't know for a very long time. Jadir had been providing weapons and weapons research to the Minbari,
Mm-hmm.
and as a result, as he put it, the shame of long-kept secrets. So
Yes.
apparently the Minbari would have considered it embarrassing.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, there's repercussions once the word that gets out that Jadir is going to be sent on to Earth.
Yeah.
We see a little bit of... We see our first Drazi warship. We see the Vree flying saucer style ships.
Yeah.
And they're all acting like a bunch of hotheads threatening to attack Babylon 5, even though there's a lot of their own people, including their ambassadors on the ship.
Right.
Or, I'm sorry, on the station.
Mm-hmm. And they're going to attack the station over Jadur if she is not handed over, which, it seems kind of silly because, everybody's had their day, everybody's had their say, and now we're going to have a war over something that has been given its due process.
Yeah, and then, like I said, it includes their own people being on the station. And
Yeah.
frankly, with the ships that are there, we've already seen that Babylon 5 is quite capable of defending itself. In fact,
yeah.
one of our Ivanova lines, you'll find our firepower quite impressive for a few seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, she looked like she was ready to pull her hair out, but there's an element of truth to that. It's not all bluster.
Right. Well, I don't think the League ships would have stood a chance against Babylon 5.
Here's a question that I didn't get. Why didn't they launch the Star Furies?
Well, maybe that would have been seen as a provocative action.
Or maybe they didn't want to reuse that clip yet again.
No.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. My Henri side. This is what you get when I'm under the weather talking. But Sinclair sets her to the task of buying time, of delaying them, because he's got an idea.
Yes. So he renegotiates with the League. Yeah, he renegotiates with the League.
But he's negotiating as Earth.
Right.
He's not negotiating from his Babylon 5 position with the Council. He's negotiating as the ambassador from Earth with the ambassadors to the League. So what is it that they come up with?
Well, they come up with that she'll be sent to Earth. Each race will send a representative to oversee the work, and when everything is done, then she's going to be turned over for trial.
Mm-hmm. Basically a technology sharing deal.
Right. And Sinclair is really sticking his neck out here because he has no authorization from the government to do this.
I'm going to disagree with you there. He has the authority to make the treaty, just like we do, just like our executive branch and our ambassadors do in the U.S. But it has to be ratified.
Right.
The problem is Sinclair does it in a way that it would be political suicide if they didn't ratify the same. Basically, he turned it around and tied their hands.
Yes.
So
and
he honked off a lot of people.
You know something, though? With Santiago as president, he would be able to pull it off.
Yes.
That would have never flown.
We see that clearly.
That would have never flown if Clark was president. True.
Because Santiago is trying to build the relationships with the alien races.
Yes. So, at any rate.
They're going to go ahead and send her on to Earth.
Yes. Put her in her ship, her Minbari shuttle, and send it out towards the jump gate, and what happens?
Kosh shows up. Finally. Yeah. Finally, the Vorlon takes an interest.
Everybody is in the command center watching this ship depart. There's all different kinds of...
Actually, they're in the council's chambers.
Oh, sorry. Okay, they're in the council chambers watching the ship depart, and everybody has this look on their face like, okay, well, are we doing the right thing or not? Kosh walks in,
And just
and
stands there for a while.
the jump gate activates.
Yes, it does. And out comes a Vorlon heavy cruiser.
A giant Vorlon ship.
Something that you just instinctively, that's one of the things I like about those Vorlon battle cruisers. You just know you don't want to mess with that.
No.
The Minbari flyer, Jadur's Minbari flyer, kind of turns into a puff of light and gas. And
yes.
The Vorlon ship is gone.
And the looks on everybody's faces as that happens is
Except
just
Lando's.
Incredible. Yeah.
Lando's face is actually just flat out amused. And
yeah,
I gotta bring up, before we hit Kosh's line, I've got to bring up one of Lando's lines that I loved in this. He had been chasing Sinclair around, trying to figure out, what's up with this Jadur story. And when Sinclair tells him, finally, when the cat's out of the bag, that we were trying to keep it quiet, he looks around and says, "Nice job."
Yeah. yeah. So at any rate, Jadur's ship is destroyed. Everybody is astonished except for
Staring
Londo,
at Kosh,
who is amused, and then everybody turns and looks at Kosh. And he tells them,
ready for immortality.
You are not, yes.
You gotta love Kosh.
You do. Very, very much to the point.
Well, there's a reason, I think, behind it. Not just that we're not mature enough as various species, but there is the downside of Jadur's discovery.
Yeah, the way that Jadur was offering this immortality was definitely not something that we would want.
For one to live, another must die.
Yes.
The key ingredient can't be synthesized. It had to come from another living creature, and the way it's presented is another living creature of the same species. Bottom line is, as she put it, you're not going to be like us, you're going to become us.
You'll fall upon each other like wolves.
Mm-hmm.
And so, exactly, and that's I can't imagine why anybody would want this, knowing this.
When you look at the way everyone was trying to get to her, to get it, when you look at the way the League was so ready to throw away their justice in order to get it, or risk throwing it away, and think about it. I can easily see them. I can easily see some societies, if not most societies, succumbing to the temptation. What are you going to do? What else are you going to do with your most heinous criminals? That's how it would start.
I don't think anybody really knew the ramifications, though, until Jadur revealed them to Sinclair at the end of the show.
Well, yeah, but that was before. That was when she was being taken off. That was when she was being taken off the ship to finally go back, right before the Vorlons killed her.
The major research would have come in at that point then to find an inorganic answer, or rather a chemical answer to the key to this.
That's where I think, as Straczynski puts it, there isn't an alternative. And I think Kosh knew that too. That's a big part, not just from an in general perspective, but I think he knew the details. Yeah, I honestly believe it would have started out, and even if somewhere eventually down the line they would have found something, as brilliant of a scientist as Jadur is supposed to be, I rather think it would have been something that would have been a long time coming, and I
Yeah.
don't think societies would have been able to wait that long. And again, as I say, it would have been the criminals, the ones condemned to death, where it would have
Yeah.
started,
Oh yeah. And her, and
and it
what
wouldn't
is
have stopped
really
there.
what is really, really makes her evil is the fact that she knows this, she knows what's going to happen, and is really proud that is going to be her legacy.
She's relishing in that legacy.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Very much like 1939 Germany.
And that to think of whether or not a government would actually do something, it's not just Germany. What is it? The Tuskegee experiments
Oh yeah.
in America?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even the best of governments and the best of intentions have had their dark stains where that's concerned.
Oh yeah.
So
All through
it's
history.
Yep. So it's not cautious concern is not a stretch at all.
No. How do you feel about him setting himself up as a judge, though? Why would someone who takes very little interest in the affairs of others set himself up as the judge in this case?
Well, is he the judge or is he the parent? There's a lot of gray area in the Vorlons, as well as the other major antagonist in the series.
Mm-hmm.
The role they view themselves in is that of a shepherd,
Yeah.
largely, or maybe a better way of putting it would be as a parent.
So why are they not more involved then in the more mundane things that are taking place? Why does it have to be something major like this before they get involved like they did?
Well, that actually to some degree gets answered further along, and part of it is that there's a core belief there for the Vorlons at least, of allowing the races to learn and develop and evolve on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to be only when that gets threatened or risked that you see a real intervention on their part. That brings up the question: did Jadur come up with this kind of technology entirely on her own, or was there possible shadow influence? I honestly don't know the answer. I honestly don't know the answer to that. But for something that incredibly advanced, when you look at it, it does sort of fit the kind of chaos that the shadows seem to seek.
Well, but theoretically, that's an interesting theory. But the way the show goes, I think we know that that's not the case.
Well, they've got ships scattered about the galaxy.
Yes.
And they've obviously got more than one. They've obviously got more than one one poker in the fire.
Right.
And the same way that the Vorlons do, with Sebastian having tested people throughout time, over several hundred years, and
however, there is
not necessarily all human.
However, there is one element that the shadows require to run their ships, and having
a sentient brain.
Right, and having humans fighting with each other, or other races fighting with each other,
it's not just a human that could drive a shadow vessel.
Didn't it have to be a telepath?
No. In fact, exactly the opposite.
Okay.
They were trying to get telepaths in. They were pulling in the telepaths to try and basically weaponize them or make a defense against the telepathic interference.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right.
So that leaves that as an, just, this is just pure speculative mental play and what ifing.
Yeah.
And I've never seen I've never seen anything as far as any sort of hint where that could be or where that could connect. So,
yeah.
Hey, if anyone out there listening to us has heard something at a convention or read something in some of the other many sources that are out there and know an answer, let us know. I'd love to know. I mean, it's just something that it's just something that just kind of popped into my head, and that would be interesting.
Yeah. So now it would seem that thanks to the Vorlons, the major part of this story has come to an end.
And the status quo has been maintained.
Right. However, it leaves a question of, what are the wind swords? Have we heard about them before?
The wind swords, yes, we have heard of. They were actually in The Gathering. That was the warrior cast that has had a lot of interest in Sinclair.
Okay, so that the person in The Gathering that first tells Sinclair that he has a hole in his mind is from the wind swords.
Yes. I'm sorry. We haven't met him yet, but we will be meeting a very prominent wind sword shortly. Naroon.
Aha. I love Naroon.
But he is a Minbari leader who his line is from the wind swords.
Yes.
So from one perspective, this primarily what it does is it introduces the wind swords to us.
Yes.
So, my friend, any other thoughts on Deathwalker?
No, Deathwalker, it was a good episode, surprising episode. I was really blown away to find out that Sarah Douglas was playing Jadur. And those of you who may not remember, she was the female Kryptonian on the second Superman movie with Christopher Reeves.
Actually, she was in the first two, but it was just a little almost a walk-on setup.
That's right. When they got put
Ursa,
yes.
Going into the Phantom Zone, and then it's like they were planning the sequel for Superman 2.
Yes.
With her as Ursa.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who might not be that, well, the other role where you see more of her that a lot of us would remember is Conan the Destroyer. She was the evil queen. She was the queen in Conan the Destroyer.
Which I still haven't watched.
You're not missing anything from that. It's more, there's the two Conan comic books. There's the kid-friendly, just Conan the Barbarian that Marvel puts out, and then there was the black and white, really gritty, dark Conan Savage Sword Conan series that ran for a while.
Right.
The first movie is that. The second movie is the comic. Yeah, well, maybe a better way than the comic books would be you've got the original Robert Howard Conan, and I would include the DeCamp and Carter write-ups with that in the first book, or in the first movie. And then you've got the comic book as the second movie, Conan the Destroyer.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen Conan the Barbarian, you owe yourself the watch, if for no other reason than just the music score.
Okay. I played it at the theater. I didn't really have an interest in it at the time. I had never read the comic books. It was just something that didn't strike me as being real interesting. I'm more of a sci-fi person than a fantasy person. So
well, this isn't even straight fantasy. This is very much the niche sword and sorcery genre.
Ah.
Of those horrid sword and sorcery movies, this is the only one that I think was truly good. Anyway.
So that about does it for us for tonight.
All right. I think I've got most of my comments and thoughts in as we've talked. A little bit disjointed, but
Yeah, but we got it done.
we got it done.
We need to remind everybody to make sure they listen to the voice at the end of our podcast here so they know how to get a hold of us and how to leave us comments, and hopefully you leave lots of comments. Fill in any gaps that we have may have left open.
Yep, and now that I'm getting well again, we will get that feedback episode, or we'll get it tacked on to the end of one of our main episodes.
Yeah, we have to do that.
Well, my friend, is this a wrap?
I think it is.
So no boom today?
No, there was no boom today.
But boom tomorrow.
There's always a boom tomorrow.
Always. Good night, my friends.
Good night now.
Podcast terminated. Thank you for listening to the Babylon Project podcast. You can email Raul and Jim at the Babylon Project podcast at gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook at the Babylon Project Podcast. On the internet, we are at babylonprojectpodcast.wordpress.com. To subscribe to the podcast, you can find us on iTunes, or you can subscribe to the RSS feed on the webpage.